Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Jorge Abreu. Thanks for being on the show, George.
Thank you for having me, Whitney.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. You're a perfect guest just from your experience, and you are out there making it happen. I just see you all over the place. Just your company's exploding. You're doing some great things. So, but a little about George, in case you haven't heard of him before. He's an active and passive full-time multifamily real estate investor with 1,720 doors on the GP side and over 1,400 plus doors on the LP side. Currently, he has another 850 doors under contract on the GP side as well. Also owns a construction company that focuses on helping multifamily investors with their full renovations. His goal is to reach 10,000 doors by the end of 2021 by creating partnerships and implementing the proper systems for scalability. So, George, thank you again for your time. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I know you and I got to meet in Texas at an event a few months back, and I'm happy that you agreed to be on the show. So, but tell the listeners a little more about who you are and maybe a little bit about your background. Let's jump into some of your superpowers in this business.
For sure. Well, thank you for that intro. Couldn't have said it better myself. And as far as more my background, I guess I started with single family investments. Probably about 13 years ago now. This was in South Florida. I'm originally from Miami, and got enough flips done with the single family to quit my W-2 and started doing full-time real estate investments. Then the crash happened, 2008, and I needed to decide to either go back to a W-2 job or at least move, because there wasn't much you could do in South Florida at that time. So that's when I decided to move to Dallas, Texas. And we continued to do more fix and flips. I decided to open a construction company to kind of scale up and ramp up the fix and flips. We were probably up to about 45 or so a year. And then about 3 years ago, I kind of opened up my eyes and looked around and noticed that, sure, I had been building this company, but it wasn't really building the wealth I wanted. It was very transactional. And I started looking more into something that can produce more cash flow. I wasn't holding much of the single family that I was doing. It was mostly fix and flips and then sell them for retail. I did a couple holds. Didn't like to manage the properties and collect rent. So when I heard about multifamily and the fact that you can purchase these 200 plus unit buildings and whatnot, before that, I didn't even know that was possible through a syndication. So I really started turning my focus towards multifamily. And so that was about 3 years ago. And then about 2.5 years ago, I completely stopped doing single family and just started focusing on multifamily. And that's with my investments as well as the construction company, and haven't looked back since.
Awesome. Well, and I hear a similar story to that often, in myself, I'm very similar, start with small multifamily, single family. And it's like one day, you realize there's this other thing out there called syndication, and, your eyes are open to that possibility. I had no idea, so it's so interesting, but you started a construction business as well. And tell us a little about that, what you were focusing on then, because it's so interesting. It's such a useful skill going into multifamily. So, elaborate a little bit on that construction business and then how you moved into a larger multifamily.
Yeah, it all started with, like I said, with the fix and flips in the single family. And we got burned several times by other general contractors, not finishing the job and taking some of the funds that we had given them. So I had worked with one of my uncles owns a construction company. I had worked with him in the past, and also have an engineering degree, and I didn't actually. So I guess I can go a little further back. I've got a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, but out of college, I didn't quite go into that. I went into the engineering department at UPS, which was more of building. Like we were taking care of the warehouses and also building additions. It was more of being an in-house general contractor, really. So I felt I had that experience, and I said, you know what, we're just going to be a general contractor. My wife thought I was crazy. My business partner thought I was crazy. But, you know, at least here in Texas, when you deliver on your promises, good things happen. So the construction company started taking off, as well as the investments. And so we were doing our own fix and flips, like I said, like up to 45 a year. And then we also had investors that we were working for doing their flips. And, you know, we had a pretty good business, but it was very, very, very time consuming. I now have 3 little daughters. You know, they're 7, 6, and 5. Thank you.
Wow.
So I wanted to figure out a way to spend more time with them as well. So that's kind of how I led back into multifamily. But yeah, as far as the construction company, I mean, it's been pretty crucial. It's helped me get into some of the multifamily deals I'm in. As far as with the partners, they felt very comfortable with me bringing that piece to it. A lot of our investors, our passive investors, feel very comfortable with that as well, especially if it's a heavy value add and you know, we have that piece in house.
I know that would make me feel better. I mean, it just the skill level you're going to have also just by having your own construction company, and that experience, you know, is extremely valuable. You know, and so I know you've become an expert in this value add type, you know, multifamily deals that everybody talks about. But and moving into that, I'd love for you to really elaborate on, you know, what value add means. That term is used so often in our space. And I hear that all the time. We got this value add deal and I see the pictures and it looks like this brand new property, you know? So I would love to just know, maybe that's okay, you know, but I'd love to know your feedback or feel on what that means. Just explain. Cause I get that question. Well, Whitney, what does value add mean when we're talking about these properties? And then let's dive into just really your superpower behind that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, what you're saying is dead on. You know, everybody's using value add now. All the brokers are saying it. And, you know, I'm sorry, but adding backsplash or adding a fence to a yard, to me is not a value add. You know, that's more, you're pushing it. So I think something above maybe 5,000 a door is when you start getting closer to that value add. And then, you know, a heavy value add is probably 10,000 a door. And it's when you're really going in there and you're doing major upgrades, and it's an older building and it needs all new roofs, or, you know, so I guess we could talk about the difference between deferred maintenance and upgrades, which,
yes.
Yeah, I like to tell investors, if you're going to invest into something that's a heavy value add, you want to make sure you ask your sponsors how much of this, let's say it's 10,000 a door, how much of that is going towards deferred maintenance and how much is going towards upgrades that's actually going to get you more income. Because if they tell you, well, 8,000 is going towards deferred maintenance and only 2,000 is going towards upgrades, you want to dig in a little bit more there, because there's going to be a lot of money put towards just fixing up the building, which is great. I mean, you definitely want to harden the building or the property, but you also need to bring value and raise the income.
Okay. So we need to ask, how much is going towards the upgrades versus the deferred maintenance? And you know, if that is swayed the other way, I think, you know, what would that tell us, or help us to understand, if I'm the passive investor, what should I be looking for, maybe in a little more detail?
Yeah, if it's swayed the other way, you know, if they're telling you barely anything's being used towards deferred maintenance, the follow-up question would probably be, well, you know, what's been replaced? Do you have can you show me the CapEx schedule that's been completed? And, you know, maybe at that point, it's probably not that big of a value add, but I don't know, maybe somebody came in and spent all that money in the deferred maintenance and didn't do any of the upgrade stuff. And, that could be a good deal. We're actually working on one like that now. It's pretty similar.
Nice. So, I'd love for us to kind of walk through the value add process a little bit and help us to be most prepared. When we have that property under contract, or maybe we're looking for that property, I'd love for us to know some key things to be prepared so we're ready to hit the ground running, or maybe some common mistakes that you see. But even, as the listeners are, I hope that, they're paying attention to that, but also as a passive investor, I want to know that my operator is ready to go, right? That they're as
Right,
prepared
right.
as
No,
possible.
that's
So help me, help walk us through that a little bit to, ways that you've been so successful in the value add, multifamily space, and when we should be prepared or start preparing.
sure. So, I mean, I see this all the time where the investors or the sponsors, during their due diligence and during the transaction of getting the property to the closing, they spend a lot of time raising the equity. And usually they do some type of due diligence. I personally think you should walk every single unit, or at least have a team that's walking all the units. Pay really close attention to your down units. You should have professionals checking out your roofs, professionals checking out your foundation, drainage, plumbing. You should scope all your sewer lines, or at least a good portion of them, to get a good idea. You should also, depending on the electrical, maybe have an electrician check it out as well. And then don't forget about your upgrades. So a lot of times I see other investors where they get all the deferred maintenance checked out, which is great, but then they don't have numbers on their upgrades, and they kind of leave it up to figure it all out when they close. So what we like to do is we want to have our scope lined out before we close. We want to have a pre-construction meeting, maybe the week before we close, and then day one, we're executing that plan. So no time is wasted. I see months go by after a closing and nothing's been done to the property yet. No upgrades, no deferred maintenance. The scope of work is still getting figured out. And then you end up spending more money than you should have, which affects your returns. To me, due diligence is more than just due diligence. I mean, to me, it's a time to figure out what it's going to cost you, exactly what your CapEx is going to be. And we've been pretty good at doing that.
I just don't understand, like, how you can close on a property and not know what this stuff's going to cost you yet, or like have no plan. How do you even raise any equity? I don't understand.
I don't know. I see it all the time though.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. But it blows my mind.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. Like, how can we even underwrite properly if you don't know what this stuff's going to cost?
Correct. I mean, we do our high level underwriting where we're kind of we're guessing,
Sure.
We're looking at pictures, but I mean, at some point, we really dig in.
Right. So, in that process of the due diligence, you mentioned like walking all the units, and I think you made a great point of like, okay, the down units are down for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some things you found that maybe weren't made so obvious to you, but that like these units were down for something that maybe you had to dig a little for to find out why?
Yeah. I mean, we've had to, I know one deal comes to mind where we walked away from it because we just kept uncovering so many things. The seller wasn't telling us how many down units there were. And then when we were walking all the units, they were supposed to be, so we didn't have it under contract yet. We were touring it, but they were supposed to be showing us all the down units, and they were kind of keeping us away from a section. And I was like, well, what's going on right over there? And they took us over there, and it was a bunch of units that had been flooded by some plumbing lines that had burst. And, they were trying to hide that from us. That's maybe 20,000 a unit, 15 to 20,000 a unit, 4 units, that adds up. So those are the kind of things you discover. We've also discovered a ton of units being used for different things, like for storage or for maintenance. And usually those units are in pretty bad shape. The ACs and those units are being used for parts and whatnot. So, I mean, it starts adding up.
Yeah. So tell me a little about like how you're preparing your team for, to begin that value add process on day one. I mean, that's like, we want to know that like our team is ready to go as soon as possible and we have a plan. And I just wonder, like, how do you know that your team is ready, even your management team as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, we get everything lined up from our crews. Our crews at that point, our crews have been out there several times.
Mm-hmm.
The seller's sick of us because we've asked to come on site who knows how many times. Usually they don't give us a hard time about it, but and everybody's just on the same page. Some things that may not be 100% figured out might be like exterior colors, or I mean, even the interior finish outs. We have a pretty standard interior finish out that we do. So we've got all of that ready. We've got our materials lined up. The only thing that might take a couple days on the interiors is really figuring out what's vacant, what's not. Sometimes that's not really accurate from what we're being shown. So we give the management team a week or so to get that under control. But I mean, everybody knows their place, everybody knows what they're doing, and then we get to work.
Okay. Can you tell us maybe an example of a business plan on a recent deal, or to kind of paint us the picture that we need to expect from our operator that we're investing with, or if we're an operator, just kind of, what does that timeline look like in the business plan? Say, okay, we've closed. Now what should happen over the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah. So I can give you, we just, late November, we closed on 1,275 units in Houston. It was a 5-property portfolio.
Small property,
real small. Yeah. So on that one, I can give you an idea of what we've done so far and how it's looking. So we started with what we call the deferred maintenance, or hardening the property, meaning we've knocked out most of the roofs at this point, so we don't have any more roof leaks. We've taken care of all the major plumbing. We had some boilers to replace. We had some sewer lines that had to be replaced. We've replaced AC units, not all of them, but the AC units that we were going to replace, the ones not working. And then we've started on the first batch of interior units. And we got the paint colors picked out about a couple weeks ago, and we started with the exterior cosmetics.
Okay.
So 2 months in, and we've completed most of the deferred maintenance, and now's when we're starting to beautify the property. That
Nice.
makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you really hit some of the bigger items first that are most important, or most, I guess, time sensitive.
Yeah, they're time sensitive. They keep they show the tenants that are there that, hey, this new owner's here to take care of things. These are things that are bothering the tenants. You got the roof leaks, you got the plumbing leaks, AC not working, obviously. So they feel much better of where they live. And then once they start seeing the upgrades, I mean, that just, turns everything around.
So, now that you've got those big items taken care of, obviously roof, plumbing, sewer, AC units, you're 2 months in now you've started on the interior. Is there a plan of like, okay, this many this month, or we hope to renovate this many units per month, or this many within 6 months? What does that look like?
Yes, for sure. On other projects, it's a lot easier so we've done projects where you've got 30 to 40 vacant units, or more than that, and then we come up with a plan of, okay, we're going to knock out 15 a month or 20 a month. Or on this one, it's a little different because the occupancy is really high and we don't have a lot of vacant units.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking a little bit of a different approach. We're actually, usually we fix, when we have that many vacant units, the 40 to 50, we fix the easiest ones first to just get them out there, get them leased. On this one, we're actually fixing the worst units first and letting the leasing team do some of the, the property management do some of the easier turns. So we're doing a little bit less on this one.
That's a large property though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little different probably than your average 100 unit, by itself, of course. So,
Correct.
anything else as far as, just being successful to, in the value add process, any other ways that you recommend being prepared or just for that value add component before we move on to a few final questions?
No, for sure. I mean, I would say it comes down a lot to your team. Make sure you have the right team and that you know exactly what you're getting into. I've heard some sponsors that they don't look at flat roofs. Well, if you've got somebody on your team that's really good with flat roofs, I mean, a flat roof can last you longer than a sloped roof. You just have to make sure you have those professionals on your side, and that way you know what you're getting into.
I like that. It's so much about team, isn't it?
Yes, big time.
So, in your case, are you focused more on your like construction team or the management team? I mean, just personally, I know they're all important, but I just mean like, what's your role amongst all these things going on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So on the construction side, I'm working on putting the pieces together where, I'm not so involved on the day to day. And then on the investment side, a little more involved on the day to day, but I'm also trying to put those pieces together where I'm mostly kind of just overseeing everything. Easier said than done, but I think you and I talked before we even got on here about systems, and a lot of it has to do with systems.
Right.
Making sure to implement the right systems.
All right, George. Well, just a few final questions before we run out of time. But what's been the hardest part of this syndication journey or process for you?
The hardest part, it's probably been I don't want to say raising the equity, because it hasn't, is the fear of raising the equity. I had never done that before. When we were doing the single families, we had a couple private lenders, but it wasn't, we weren't syndicating a deal. So that was pretty new to me. And then my first couple syndications, I partnered with somebody that was their main role. So yeah, raising the capital has been different, but now that I've jumped in and gotten into it, I mean, I actually enjoy it. So
good.
Yeah.
What was key and like overcoming that fear, as other than just getting in there and all of a sudden it's working now and it's easier, but what was key in learning to raise the capital initially?
I guess one of the things is just feeling comfortable, speaking to somebody about how much money they have to invest, and realizing that, what we do is a good tool for them, and it can help them make their money work for them, rather than keeping it in these retirement plans or wherever they have it. Once I realized that, I think that's what made it easy or easier.
Right. And how are you prepared for this potential downturn that everybody's talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we've been on a great run with the market, and it's going to get soft at some point. I think we all know that. So we're really careful on our purchase. We believe the money is made when you buy. So we have not gotten into any of these bidding wars as far as pricing. If something's listed and it's going to highest and best, we're most likely not bidding on it. We're working harder to find those pocket listings or to go straight to the seller, to make sure we're coming in at a good price, and that when that downturn does come, that we got in at a good basis and we can move things around and make it work. Also, the financing is pretty important, making sure we've got the financing to hold us through that.
What's a way that you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Something recently, specifically, I could say more systems, but obviously that's not specific. But
maybe there's a specific thing that's helped you to create those systems, or a software, or anything.
Yeah. I mean, we just started implementing an investor portal. And that's been a lot of work on the front end, but I think it's going to save us a lot of time. Yeah, I definitely think an investor portal is
nice.
As we continue to grow, I mean, I think we need it.
How do you stand out in your relationship with your investors?
We're always thinking about ways to stand out. I mean, I'm very customer service minded, and I'll give you a simple example. You know, on all our deals, we send hard binders to our investors with important information about the deal. It gives them somewhere to put their financials if they want, to keep their K1s, and it's something physical that they can touch, you know, and it makes it feel a little more real. And we try to just do more things like that, you know, and always stay in contact with our investors so we can stand out. Yeah.
Is that at after closing, or is that something
right after closing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that. And what's the way you're finding investors right now?
You know, a lot of social media. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I lost count how many networking events a year, but a lot of them. And majority of social media and networking.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Focus, 100% focus. If I would have continued to keep trying to do single family investments and multifamily investments and the construction company and trying to do it all myself, there's no way. So yeah, focusing.
Be no time for those little girls in, would there?
No.
Not worth that.
Right.
So, you know, and tell us how you like to give back.
So, yeah, this year we've made a commitment within our team that we're gonna pick a philanthropy and start giving back, probably doing something quarterly. So I can't say that we have really done anything yet. I just know it's on top of our goals for this year to really go out there and give back.
Cool. Well, George, I'm grateful for your time and just sharing your experience and expertise and just in the value add component of this process and business that, you know, we hear that term all the time. So I love diving into that, and somebody that's just an expert in that like you are. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Yeah, so you can find out more on our website. It's elevatecig.com. That's Commercial Investment Group, CIG. And then you can also email me. It's Jorge or George, JORGE @elevatecig.com. I do have a checklist I can send you for due diligence and for CapEx. So if you guys email me, I'll send that over.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.